Welcome to NCFM, Women Against False Accusations. This podcast shares truth about false accusations of sexual assault and abuse, revealing just how easy it is for the men in our lives to be falsely accused. You will hear true, heartbreaking, and sometimes shocking stories from the mothers, sisters, wives, friends, and advocates of men living the trauma of a society that has moved away from presumption of innocence. We invite you to join us as we take a stand for truth.
Hello, my name is Harry Crouch. I'm president of the National Coalition for Men, and I want to introduce you to, I think this is the third or fourth in our series of video conversations with people who have either been falsely accused or the loved ones of people who have been falsely accused. I think these are very important because we don't often hear about the families, how the families are impacted by false allegations. So when somebody's falsely accused, it's just not the person who's falsely accused that suffers the consequences of such irresponsible behavior. But it's the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters, the siblings, the friends, the neighbors, the employers, a whole host of people who care about that individual. Consequently, we started a program several months ago, Women Against False Allegations, which is headed by a wonderful person by the name of Lori DeBolt, who you will be meeting in about 10 seconds because I'm turning this over to her and she will introduce you to the next person in our series. Lori, it's all yours.
Thank you, Harry. Hey, everyone, I'm Lori DeBold, and I'm director of NCFM Women Against False Accusations. Started this because my own son was falsely accused, and we've been meeting with and talking with several men, several women who have had men and boys, sons in their lives going through this as well. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Fitzgerald. Very bizarre, but very common story. Breaks my heart every time I think about you, Thomas. So let me go ahead and turn this over to Thomas, and we'll let him share his story with us.
Okay, as Mr. Bolt said, I'm Thomas Fitzgerald. I am a man undergoing false allegations at this moment. And as Mr. Crouch pointed out, it has affected my family, friends, loved ones very much. I actually stand currently facing a 5-year mandatory minimum that we will hopefully beat. But how we got to this point is it's quite a long road, but we're going to give you the quick of it. There was a woman that I'd been a good friend of mine for years. I don't know if you know this type of person, but someone who always needs rescuing, like in their life, they constantly have a lineup of people to rescue them because they're always being abused. And you feel bad for this sort of person, and especially not knowing that this could be some sort of mental thing. I guess we go back to 6 years ago when I first moved home. Right before I got this place, I was staying in my Airstream of my sister's yard awaiting mortgage to be finalized. And I got not unusual communication from this woman. And it was, my boyfriend is beating me, hurting my dog. I need to get out of here now. And this is late at night, and there was a gun involved. At the time, I had just lost my job, so I don't have any income at the moment. But I'm always going to be there to help someone who needs it. From my understanding, there was a gun involved in this. And so I was staying in my sister's yard. I went to my sister. It was like, I think there's a gun involved. I've got to go pick this woman up. I'm very terrified of what might happen. There's no telling what this guy's going to do to me. My sister said we'd go take care of it. And so I went and picked up my Uncle Craig just to have someone there with me, and we drove the 2.5 hours to pick her up. When we arrived, there was garbage bags, I guess, completely full of all of her earthly possessions with her dog. So we loaded the truck up. I brought her back. I had always, your memory slips after some years. I had always thought, well, why didn't she stay in the Airstream with me? Because that's where I had, because I got her a motel. I forgot that my sister had said, you're not going to bring any drama like that around my house. I have children. So fair, right? I got her a very nice motel with it would accept pets, and stay there as long as you need to sort this out. I come to find out a few days later, she had the man that I just went and rescued her from overstaying at this motel. That did not click. I did not understand that. Come later, I will understand it. She went back to him, and not long after, I was going to make a trip to Colorado to meet up with someone I worked with in Florida prior to moving back here. Just a friendly visit. It's not often in life that you don't have a job and actually have some free time to go do something. So, and my Uncle Craig had never been. I said, well, why don't you just come up to Colorado with us? You get some time off. And she came. As we're driving up there, I get told, I have something to tell you, and please don't judge me, but I am highly addicted to opiates, and I need you to pull over so that I can shoot up these opiates. Otherwise, I'm going to get very, very sick. Okay, well, no judgment on my part, but that kind of clicked in my head why this man was back over there. As drug users, you're going to pretty much do anything you can to get your fix. So she was a zombie for most of that trip. Then maybe a month later, she called me with the same sort of story. He's beating me and my dog. And said, well, I'll come get you. You can come to my house. I had this house by that point. And she came over, and the level of drunkenness and drug abuse it was really high. But I had known this woman half my life, and I felt real bad for her. How do we help this person, right? So she had also told me, all I really want, I want to get clean, and I want to be, her words, barefoot in the kitchen. I want a family. I'm not getting any younger. I wanted a family as well. So I can make that happen. I can make that happen. And she said, okay, well, I've got to go back. I've got to get my stuff. I'll have a decision for you in 6 days. Come back and get me. So 6 days went by, and I drive back to pick her up. And that night, she never mentioned anything about starting this family or any decision she had made. This was, again, 6 years ago. I finally asked her that night, well, did you come to a decision? And she said, yeah. And basically she said, I'm choosing the drugs. I was livid. My degree of livid was simply, you need to go get in my truck right now. Don't say a word. I'm driving you back there, and I'm done with this. If that's your decision, okay, but I'm taking myself out of this equation. So I drove her back. I was devastated. I laid on my couch. I was just very depressed over that. But there's only so long you can lay on your couch when you have bills that need to be paid. So I pulled myself up. The next few years, I had some relationships. I met some friends. I lived life. This was my mid-30s. I was having a good time. And time went by, and I hear that her sister had gone to, this was maybe 3 to 4 years had gone by. I heard her sister had went to rescue her because of the same things that she was telling me prior. And then her sister brought her to live with her. And I was like, well, that's very good for her. Well, around this same time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after she's into the, detox process, a friend of hers was stabbed in a drug deal gone wrong. And her sister had allowed her to move in with him to take care of him. I still don't really put that one together, because if someone is detoxing off of these really, really hard opiates, you would think that they need to take care of themselves before they're able to go take care of someone else. Looking back, her family has honestly enabled this sort of behavior for years. So she goes there. A few weeks go by, and the man that she went to stay with has charges of battery from kicking her in the head. And then I think it probably did happen. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I felt bad for her. This was around Christmas time. And in my world, Christmas time is a lonely time after you go through my family being ripped apart at 17. And, you know, Christmas was always this family get together thing, but I hadn't had that now for over 20 years. So it's a very lonely time for me. So I was like, well, I guess she can come stay over for a couple of weeks, and then you got to go, because my previous experience and all the red flags told me you cannot have this person in your life long term. Well, she came and stayed, and the 2 weeks went by, and she just was the perfect person. Very nice, kind. She was getting cleaned up. There were still some issues, but she was getting better. And she kind of became the exact person that I would consider a perfect mate. And the same thing came up about starting a family. I thought, this is great. Okay. Well, she stayed another month. I said, oh, well, if this is how it's going to be, we're going to start a family. Let's set a wedding date. And so we did. Not long after that date was set, she changed, and I started to be degraded. The sarcasm came out. I was put down a lot, yet at the same time, that same stuff that initially made me think she was the perfect mate was sprinkled in. Looking back and through studies, the initial part is this is the beginning and the first and second phases of the narcissistic relationship cycle, where it starts with the love bombing, and this person does actually become the person they believe you would see as the perfect mate, and which leads into the devalue phase. So the wedding date was approaching. I almost didn't go through with it, but I did. And we were married. So we were also still trying to have a child. This took a year and a half, and we did get pregnant. During that year and a half, the emotional abuse that was wrought upon me was very much, it's a lot. I didn't even really know what emotional abuse was at that point, but I start researching, like, why is someone doing this to me and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this is a thing. And so I move forward with that. And also as a man, you're told to suck it up quite a bit. You're just told to suck it up and move forward. There was a point where I said, I can't. Well, okay, I apologize. Our son was born. He was healthy. We were so happy. This is me and my son, Zeke.
Aww.
And I was so happy he was healthy, because as soon as she got pregnant, I did everything I could to keep her temper down, because you know that, like, with child development, it starts in the womb. I started cooking. I made sure they were healthy. She takes Xanax daily throughout the day, extended release as well as immediate release, to deal with her anxiety, I suppose. But she refused to get totally off of it while she was pregnant. The exact words she said when I had concerns were, what's the worst that can happen? He has a cleft palate. That's a child's life. That's his whole life. And that really kind of shook me up. But my son came, and my world changed that day. He's everything to me. And things got continually worse with her, and it got really bad at the point where I would say, what you're doing to me and how you're treating me, I'm not going to put up with, because I'll leave. You cannot treat me as subhuman. I would not do that to you. and the actions and the way you're talking to me, and I would lay out exactly what you did that was wrong. And I guess at that point, I stopped providing the narcissistic supply that keeps this sort of personality going, which leads into the discard phase. When my son was about 5 months old, she would take him to her mother's every Friday, and then I guess she would drop him off and she would go see friends or, do whatever. I'm not the type to keep tabs. Now she would go through my phone every day. The tabs, I was accused of cheating. Every Friday when she got back, I've been cheating on her the whole time she was gone. I was playing a golf scramble every Friday. She came in at 10:30 one night with him. His bedtime was at 8, and it took me 2.5 hours of walking him around to get him to sleep. And I said, the next week, I said, you can still go, but you can't bring him in that late. His bedtime is at 8. So how about we, make a deal and you're home no later than 8:30. Okay, cool. Well, the next week she came in, I put him to sleep, no problems. She passed out on the couch with her legs hanging over, and 10 to 20 minutes after I put him to sleep, he woke up and I don't know if you have ever had a child that age, they have that kind of scream that can happen that just pierces your ears. And it took me probably another hour of, working with him and walking him around and singing to him to get him calmed down and back to sleep. Through that time, she did not move. She did not even notice the noise. And I'm kind of it clicked. She's messed up on something. Well, I didn't say anything about it because I know if I say anything negative, the next 3 to 4 days of my life are going to be living hell. But I just didn't know what to do. So the week later or the week after that, she didn't come home. I'm leaving from golf and I call her, do you want something to eat? I stop and get us fajitas. She tells me that she's pulled over by a ditch fighting with her mother, which didn't make any sense because she loved her mother more than anyone. I've never seen them fight. So I'm smelling, that bullshit right there, but it's okay. I get home, nobody's here. I talk to her again. She says, well, people are all around here. A lot of people pulled over to check on me. And I told them that me and you were fighting. I was like, one, we were not fighting, but okay. And this is a very small town. If you're saying anything derogatory, that's going to get around very quick. But I can deal with people, having negative thoughts towards me. Fine. So, okay. She didn't come home, though. And my son didn't come home. And I freaked out. Me and her brother had words about a week prior, and I forget over what, but in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, they've decided this is an exit strategy, and they're taking my son. So I get in my truck, and I'm headed to knock on his door. And then I think that's probably a horrible idea right now. You need to go home, you need to go to bed, and you need to assess the situation. So that's what I did. We spoke the next day. I said, look, you just come home and I'll pretend this never happened. I won't ask a question about it. No problems. But if there were people there, I'm going to find out what happened and I'm not going to have to try. This is a very small town. A couple of weeks go by and she wanted beef and broccoli for dinner. So I'm at the store and I screw up. I thought she wanted chicken and broccoli. So that's what I'm purchasing. And a man comes up to me and asks, are you Thomas Fitzgerald? Yes, sir. What can I do for you? Yeah, I'm the one that pulled your wife out of a ditch. Oh, okay. And he said, yes, she was messed up and your son was in the car. And I wasn't even gonna go out except I heard a child was involved. And he said, no, I didn't want to call the police or get the police involved. And in a small town, that's kind of what you do for a lot of people because a lot of the times, I'm sorry, police are not your friends. and you bring them in, it just makes a bad situation worse. A large percentage of the time. I'm not saying all the time. I did tell him, God, I wish you had called the police. But I said, okay. So I went home and I cooked. And I didn't say a word about it. But when she went to bed, I took her keys and I hid them because it was going to be only a few more days until she went back to see her mother with our son. And that day came. And I said, where are my keys? You can leave, but here's what I heard. And you're not taking them. It's not anymore. You know, you're going to have to prove yourself at this moment. You're not putting him in danger. And I was told that that man was lying to me, that I'm from a town of small-minded imbeciles, and we are all a bunch of liars. I said, I really don't think that man would come up to me in the store and feed me a line of bull like that. This was probably 2 hours or 3 hours of her on me like that, with me continually saying, I don't care. You can go. You are not taking him, period. And then she broke down and said, well, okay, it's true, but I'm so ashamed and I'll never happen again. And I hate myself for it and all this. So he also said that his Meemaw, who he stays at her house now, and she's actually his main caregiver. She's a 74-year-old woman, very nice woman. She's always been nice to me until recent times. That's what she lives for. She doesn't have long left. So I said, okay, but you cannot be out there. You cannot get messed up in any way, and you have to have him home on time. And she came in that night. And also leading up to this, as I had expressed, there were many, many, many times where it was, she just fight with me over stuff. And I don't even fight back. I don't even think I've ever started a fight with her. Like, I'll just sit there and take it. But she just wouldn't take me sitting there and take it. It was just an onslaught. And then it would turn into, well, I'm going to call the cops on you. And I remember telling her, call the cops on me. You're going to seem like an idiot. I mean, you're going to get here and there's nothing wrong with you. And it's, yeah, wait till they get here. We'll see if something's wrong with me. Well, I had done research, and it basically said if someone in that situation is threatening to call the police on you, you leave the house that night and come back the next day. Let whatever it is blow over. So I did that so many times. If she threatened to call the police on me, I left. I've slept right out here on the pier. I've slept in the travel trailer. I've slept in the woods down there. I've slept not in the house. And the next day, it's all like nothing happened. Well, this night, the same sort of thing happened, and not being able to go into much of it at this point, I find out the next day that I have charges of assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault, as well as interfering with a 911 call. It just blew my mind. I did leave for a little bit. I knew that if I had these allegations towards me, I had to do a few things. I had to find a bondsman. I had to find an attorney. I had to figure out exactly what was going on, what I was charged with. I ended up with an $87,000 bond, which cost over $8,700 to get bonded out of jail. They put me in. It was only 30 hours in solitary, and they told me that I had to, that was a cooling off period. I wasn't even mad until they told me they were keeping me in there for 30 hours. They kept asking me if I wanted a book. And I was like, I looked at their books. It was a bunch of like cruddy romance novels. I don't want a book. Well, 2 a.m. rolls around. Yes, I would like a book. They said, well, what do you like to read? I said, I prefer nonfiction. 30 minutes later, one of the guards brought me 2 books. One was on Amelia Earhart, and the other was an account of a woman who went through the Holocaust. I know a lot surfaced about Amelia Earhart since I studied her as a child, but I picked the Holocaust book. I think it was called I've Lived 1,000 Lives. And I sat there and I read that book, and it was about a little girl who went through Auschwitz, saw her family decimated. And I mean, that really gives you some perspective. Like a little bit of solitary confinement is nothing compared to what these people went through. So I get out and I have the temporary restraining order. I can't come home for a couple weeks. They had stripped the house of everything. She had already left. And then I had to fight the restraining order or protection order. I won. I went to court and I had it lifted. I did file for divorce against her. That's when she was all really nice until she got papers that said, I'm divorcing you too. That's kind of weird. I got supervised visitation once I had the order dropped, which decimated me because I got to see my son 4 hours every couple of weeks and it had to be supervised. That went on for months. I never messed anything up. Then with the divorce, I won unsupervised visitation. They did find me to be a violent man. She submitted stuff that I couldn't say out. I had to sit there and plead the fifth because I had these other pending charges. And I know what she is absolute BS. But so they found me violent, but at the same time, they found me not to be a danger to my son. So now I get to see him approximately 16 hours per month. I think that's been going on since January. I think there's been 3 visitations where I've not been accused of doing something to him, which the last one, it just led up to CPS being at my house yesterday. And after all of that and looking back and the reflection and learning about the narcissistic relationship cycle and that sort of personality disorder, like things are put into place a whole lot. During that time, I had one of my best friends, Travis Hall. He went through the family court system in Texas. And the only way he could find to end his suffering last March was to take his own life. And that's kind of why I'm here today, to speak for those who can't speak for themselves and to help bring awareness to this. The thing that scares me the most about it is that the people that seem to care, the people that it's happened to, are the family members of the people that it's happened to. And I fear that for us to hit a critical mass of enough people to affect change is that it's going to have to, these false allegations are going to happen to like a large percentage of the population. Because otherwise people go, people don't think about this. But that's where I am and where I sit, and God willing, I will make it out of these charges. And if not, I'll see you guys in 5 to 10.
Thomas, it's not going to be 5 to 10, my friend. But it scares me because it could, but my prayer is that it's not, right? Listening to your story, it always gets to me. I remember the times with my father, and God, they were beautiful, right? Good memories. And I didn't have very much time with him. Harry, what are your thoughts on all of this? You're on mute, Harry.
I forget I put you on mute. I didn't want to cough and interrupt anything. I've heard so many stories like this. They kind of run together for me. And I always come similar. I was going through something. I picked up an old journal today and it built into a page, and for some odd reason, I'd stuck a little editorial I'd written for the San Diego Tribune about false allegations in Brian Banks. And it's dated 2012. I've been doing this so long that while every story has its idiosyncrasies, they all kind of run together. And the bottom of the story, what I find is that the person who made the false allegation is still walking around free to falsely accuse somebody else.
Exactly. And I think that's the part that makes me so sick, right? Is that, I label them toxic women, toxic accusers. But I mean, we think about your friend, Travis Hall. He's gone. His family has forever lost an important member in their lives. He's just
Yeah.
gone. You know, you going through your stress, your family, right? Understanding this, you and your son's relationship. Keep in mind, and I see that you're a good dad, and I've talked to you several times before this, and I've heard really good stories. I didn't get to see my dad a lot either. And the times that we had together were extremely valuable and something I hold, like really close to my heart. So I know what kind of man you are, and I know your son's going to remember that and hang on to it, and it'll grow. Narcissistic women, this toxicity that's out there, just I can't even call it an American justice system anymore because it does not make sense to me. There's no justice in our American system for any of this. And I noticed that you were always wanting to go in there and help, right? Harry and Thomas, you guys are helpers, right? You're protectors. I mean, how does that make you feel when you're there to help and there's all this rejection in such a vicious way? How do you guys handle that?
Well, speaking for myself, I've been doing this work for many, many years. I think I'm going on 30, and like I've told people before, I'm only 42 years old. Look at me. Look what the work does to me. I mean, it takes its toll. I'm a men's rights advocate. That's what I do. What we're talking about here is just one aspect of all the things that the National Coalition for Men are involved in. But it's one that has always just driven me nuts. It's hard to say why the judicial system is the way it is. But in our history, and the history of the world, generally speaking, men have been have treated women differentially. Men are responsible, and people are not going to like it when I say this, and typically women are not. Whether it's the selective service, where men are required to sign up and women aren't, whether it be false allegations, where if a man had made a false allegation against a woman, all hell would break loose. It would be a totally different thing. And the press would go crazy if it were somebody of notoriety. They would be digging and all sorts of things, but not so in these situations, whether talk about paternity or paternity fraud, wrongful paternity, and all the shades involved with that, or all the shades involved with a wrongful accusation. There are wrongful accusations without malice. How is the society supposed to treat a wrongful allegation without malice? That's an error, right? But then there should be some consequence for people who make allegations against others with malice. For example, Kit Martin's situation down in Kentucky, who's just been convicted of triple homicide, and we know damn well he didn't do it. I mean, there's just no question about he didn't do it. And every day now we're still working on it behind the scenes, and that all started with what? A false allegation. And what happened to the woman who made the false allegations? And she's still running around free, able to make any more false allegations that she chooses to make. And she's defrauded people, all sorts of things. People may not have heard of the Jerry Cox case. He lost a 417-acre ranch. He's now homeless, all because of a false allegation of rape. And we've been working with Jerry now for 6 years, I guess, trying to help him out, trying to, in a sense, get him free of all this stuff. And the corruption involved in it is incredible. It goes to the judge, attorneys. It's just incredible. This whole thing stinks. So whenever we talk about one of the stories that we're doing in this series, it's much, much more involved than we might initially think it is. And there are reasons that go deep, 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 both culturally and societally. And I wish I had the answers to all of them, but I don't. Although it seems to me pretty simple. If somebody commits a crime against somebody else, there should be some level of accountability. And certainly someone makes a false allegation, a false police report, any of those things, they commit crimes. And they should be held accountable. And it seems to me if the false accusers were to be held accountable, that over time, 10 years, 15 years, however long it takes, the judicial system will change. People will know not to make false allegations. And Laura, you know better than to ask me a question because I just go on and on and on. But
You're welcome.
I think it's important for people to know that and maybe take a look at what they believe in terms of things like that.
You're such a wealth of information, Harry, and I'm learning from you. I'm older than you, but you've had so much more experience than I have.
You're older than 32, you can't tell it.
But you're right. Holding them accountable for this has to be a solution that we put into our system. It's just not happening. And even when we try to hold them accountable, some of the systems say, oh, it'll prevent the other women from coming forward. And we know how we feel about that, right?
That's the argument on the other side. I call it our disloyal opposition, but that's one of their arguments. You can't hold these people accountable because that may stop somebody else from being held accountable who actually commits a crime. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thinking is, so it's intentional. There's nothing that's intentional, wrongful thinking to facilitate a political agenda. It has nothing to do with equitable treatment. Nothing to do with the fair treatment, nothing to do with our Constitution, nothing to do with the mores upon which this country and many others were founded. It's a whole new ideological bent, anti-patriarchal, that sort of thing. That's a deep, deep lesson. It bores even me. I could teach it, but it bores even me.
I understand that. And so in the meantime, we have, everyone hears on the news, like the big name, the high profile people. We hear about that. We think, okay, all right, let's bring it down to what's happening here in our level, right? Thomas's level, Jerry's level, people that are not high profile. This is happening all across America every day. And people don't see the pain, right, that our men are going through. And Thomas, I think you mentioned that, men are kind of taught to suck it up, right? And so that's why I'm here, is because my dad was one of those, I'm going to suck it up kind of guy, right? My son's father was the same way. And I just want to get this out there. Our men need our help. Our men are totally being destroyed by these narcissistic, toxic women and the system that supports them. So we have to understand that this is happening everywhere. And Thomas, I hope it doesn't get to critical mass, right? And this is why Harry and I are here to make America aware of these false accusations that are happening every day. And my heart goes out to you in a big way.
And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made the phone call to us, and I'm glad you're with us. Hopefully, through that interaction, you find some help.
Me too.
So Thomas, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I know it's very courageous for you to do that. If you had maybe just one last thing to share with our audience, maybe advice or another comment, what would that be?
One thing that I came up with after all this, I actually put together a men's guide to high conflict divorce. And after this, I actually met with a woman's advocate. I was being harassed incessantly by the brother. And I wanted to, if they were able to get a protective order, I want a protective order for him to leave me alone. I was actually sent to a woman's advocate. And she did go through and say, oh my gosh, you've been emotionally abused tremendously. And she did file to get me a protective order, although the DA denied it because of pending charges. But looking back, if I had found an advocate like that while I was actually going through the emotional abuse before any of this had happened, and got a protective order for my son and myself, that would have really changed the tide in all of this. And I wouldn't say to do that if it's not warranted. But if it is absolutely warranted, then go out and find that advocate in your area, because I didn't know they were there, but they are there. And even though she was a woman's advocate, she was there for anybody. I guess it's just more prevalent that women need these sorts of advocates, but they are in your community. And if you're going through emotional abuse, I would suggest reaching out to one.
That's amazing and very good advice. Very good advice. And I'm interested to see your high conflict divorce guide. I think that'll be amazing. And again, you're absolutely right. I fully support that. Everyone should be able to go out and get help. Everyone, not just women, men too.
Okay, Thomas, hold up your guide. Okay, this thing weighs, I don't know, 6 pounds. 2008, National Directory of Domestic Violence Programs, 30 years of working to keep women and children safe. 2008. I don't know what the new one looks like. There's over 2,000 programs in here for women and children. Over 2,000. You know how many there are in here for men? Want to take a guess? It's a very small number. 0. So while I admire the fact that you reached out and found an advocate who was helpful to you, I've heard over and over and over, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've heard people tell me when they reached out, they were shunned. Even years ago, that there's no such thing as an abused man. And that's a theory that was, the domestic violence industry was founded on. That theory, among others. Okay, but they had to deny men could be abused because they needed to promote victimhood of women. So you're very fortunate in reaching out and finding somebody to help you. I would not dissuade anybody from doing that, and I would encourage people to do that, and I would encourage people, if they're shunned, to give us a call. Okay.
I agree. It was interesting. One of the first things this woman said to me was, you know, men can be abused too. And I'm like, I'm way past you here, ma'am. Like, I know, and I have been, but maybe you are right that it's not as, that I was very, very fortunate to find someone who held that viewpoint.
Well, fortunately, for over the last few decades, because of organizations like ours and others, people are becoming more and more educated about it. And other groups who are reaching out, doing more and more things, educating people in the public, that raises awareness too. And the more we raise awareness, the less friction we're going to experience in situations where we need assistance just because we're men. So it is getting better, much, much better. Not with respect to false allegations, I don't think. Certainly with respect to understanding that men can be abused too, and be abused by women. You know, one of the things about the feminists could never explain was, please explain, if men are always perpetrators, women are always victims, please explain to me lesbian on lesbian violence. You ever thought about that? You know, not just same-sex violence, but matter of fact, same-sex violence amongst women is some of the most creative and violent on the planet. But they don't want anybody to know that. So who they are just loyal opposition. You're very, very fortunate. And thank you for doing what you're doing now, because people need to hear that.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Absolutely. Amazing. My prayers are with you. My thoughts are with you. And we're praying for good outcome for you and your son. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to our true stories. If you have a story to share about a man in your life, please reach out to us at www.untitled www.womenagainstfalseaccusations.ncfm.org. The National Coalition for Men has been advocating for men and the women who love them since 1977. Our NCFM Women's Group offers emotional support and a place to actively work together to raise awareness around false accusations. Remember, you are not alone. Join us to learn more.
Where is our desire for equal opportunity for men and women in society? Did you know that 94% of all work-related deaths and injuries are male? Or that 3 out of 4 suicides and homicides are male? And that men die an average of 6 years earlier than women? And recent studies show men and boys can be victims of family violence more often than women and girls. Yet in spite of this alarming news, there are only 2 commissions in the U.S. created to address these and other serious issues facing our men and boys today. In comparison, there have been over 250 commissions established to help women and girls address serious issues concerning their health and well-being. It's obvious that a federal commission dedicated to the health and status of our men and boys is desperately needed. Please help us, the National Coalition for Men, as we dedicate ourselves to making this ambitious dream a reality. For more information about NCFM, its membership opportunities, or financial support, go to ncfm.org. That's ncfm.org.